Today I'm going to attempt this painting of Simone in red. Wonderful model, painted from life many times. Happened to shoot some photos long time ago, and I sketched it up in charcoal today. Spent about, just so you guys know, I spent about 15 minutes, maybe a little longer, but not much, sketching it up, getting my proportions down, just because I haven't done that for you guys. And I fixed it. I hit a spray coat of spray fix on it. But there's still a few little, then I came over it with a little bit of vine charcoal here and there, like up in here. And so that's going to smear a little bit, but most of it's going to hold. Most of it's going to hold. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up. First thing I'm going to do is get a background in, but I'm not going to paint the background quite that color. I'm going to dull it down a little bit more so the red stands out. Maybe darken it a little bit. So to speak, dull it and darken it. So what am I going to use for that? I'm going to start with the asphaltum. You can use burn umber, and I'm going to throw a little Cornoctin red in it, but not too much. I threw too much into it. Bring a little bit more ochre. So I'm just going to adjust the color over and over until I think it's a pretty good color. So I want it. That's about right, actually. You know, I'm thinking as I want it dark enough, but I also want it light enough. I want it light enough to be able to show the shadow off. So I may want to lighten it a little bit more, but for right now, we're going to keep it about here. Maybe bring a little bit more ochre into it. A little bit more ochre. Mellow it out a little bit more. And we're just going to kind of get a background. That's going to let me know about where I need to make that shadow flesh tone. It's going to give me a good characteristic of exactly kind of what I need. So if you know, I kind of yellowed it out. And in essence, what that does is it neutralizes it. By neutralizing it, I'm not making it as pure of a hue. That red hue isn't as obvious. It's still red, but it's not a red, bright red. So we're going to get as much of that in as I can, kind of thin. And this is the kind of thing that I find I've done many portraits, and many times I'll go back and adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust and just keep adjusting later on in the painting. But for right now, it feels okay. And I'm remixing the color a couple times because I didn't mix up enough. Got to get a little bit of terp into it so I can get it spread around. Kind of a similar color. If that color varies a little bit, I don't really care. We're going to talk a little bit about the kind of green chair too. That's not going to be as green. We keep everything a little bit somewhat analogous so that it holds together color-wise. That way I can use a little bit of a cool to violate some of the lights in her flesh tone, which is really nice. And it actually shows it in reality. But say what I try and do is get all this in, and particularly when I'm doing demos, get the stuff in fast. And then if I feel I need to, I will, and I can always go back and readjust that color. So using a combination of turf and my medium. My medium is a mixture of safflower oil, and I brought some solvent-free gel in a liquid form. I don't know if I like it, but I mixed it with the safflower. And we'll see how it works. Not positive. We want to get a little darker as it moves down into the shadow. Might as well do it now so I don't have to deal with it later. It's going to be, so what I did is I just threw more asphaltum into it. And it's a little on the red side, so I threw a little blue into that also. It's always fun to do this. Let's see here. I want to get enough of this in. This is the boring stuff to watch, so I try and not take. That's one of the reasons I use this giant brush, is I know I can get it in quick. And if I were doing this on my own time, I might be using more of a number 12 or something. But for time's sake, particularly in a background. I do want to, there we go. Let's bring it on down. And if I'd rather paint a little into the edges of the drawing than I would paint up to the edges. I'd rather paint a little bit farther in. Or as I've been told that I have said is paint through, not to. Okay, so other side, no. Other side doesn't have that. So the other side is going to be more in this range. And I just took more quinacridine red and there we go. And the yellow ochre, brought them together, mixed them right back into the color I was using. When you do this kind of stuff that I was just talking, what happens is you don't mix the same color. So your background doesn't become like a flat color that you laid in at the end. It's got a little bit of movement, color and value. So we just about got most of this laid in. A little bit more and we'll have it. Don't want to waste a lot of time. That's one of the reasons I drew is I wanted to be able to spend more time on the figure. So I actually prefaced it with a little bit more of a drawing than I would have when I'm doing a quick landscape. Be nice to be able to carry it a little further than a lot of the stuff that I've done. It's interesting. A lot of stuff I've been posting, I've noticed, are demos from class. And it's like I don't do any other work. I do a lot of other work. I actually don't post everything I've done until it's ready for gallery. In other words, I'm going to show it because I've got about 17 paintings right behind me of jazz singers that I'm going to be posting someday. Okay, so we got a little bit of a background tone going on in here. Now let's anchor this thing with some darks. So I'm going to grab my number, well, let's start with a number 12. What do you say? And we're going to go as dark as we can. I'm going to go asphaltum, ultramarine blue, boom. I went a little cold and blue, so I can throw a little quinacridine red, or I can throw a little green. I want it neutral. There we go. That's a pretty good neutral color. Could probably go a little bluer, but I don't care. That's good enough for right now. And she's got a bandana on. It's a little stiff. Had to add a little bit of medium to that paint. Paint's a little stiff. You can feel it when you start to put it down. If you're having to work really hard to get that paint to lay down, it just means you need to loosen your paint up. And we'll get the whole thing in. I don't know why I'm trying to separate that. I can separate it later if I really want to. The rest of her hair is kind of this rich, dark. And I want an interesting edge, but not a brittle edge. Let's wipe that off my ear. And let's go up, get the top in. See, if I lay enough of this in just right, for the sake of the demo, I can have it looking like it's basically done. Even though in reality, if I were really doing a super finished portrait, I might go back and work a little bit on it. But I'm much more concerned about the edges than I am the interior. I guess that's a good comment, so I should kind of mention that one more time. I'm more concerned about the edges than I am the interior at this particular moment. Later on in the painting, I may become a little bit more concerned about the interior. I'm going to set that down for a second, pick up one of my smaller brushes. Let's pick up this little round here. I don't use rounds too often, but I recently bought a couple. And we're going to just go a little bit around the ear. Right down there, a little bit on the back side of the ear. That's the reason I wanted to do this, is for this reason. I'm trying not to destroy the ear. If I do, not a lot is lost. It's just that trying to save time. And add a little bit more blue to it. If I was feeling a little bit on the red side, I want red, and it comes out here. Okay. A couple of wispy back here. I don't have to put them in now. Okay, leave it alone. Leave that alone. Let's start to block in the shadows on her. So for that, I think I'm going to use like a number 8, a little rosemary ivory number 8 here. And this takes a little bit more care in color mixing. Why? Because I've got several kinds of shadows. I've got a very deep shadow on the arm, which is close to the deep shadow on the red. And I've got a lighter shadow here. And then I've got a little bit of a lighter shadow up in there. So I'm going to start a little bit on the light side. So I'm going to take the color I was using, I'm going to mix a little bit of white to it and a little orange. I'm going to keep it a little bit on the red side because I'm going to let the lights that come in and begin to illuminate her be a little cool. So one thing I want to do, I want it darker than this. Nope, not dark enough. One stroke and I can tell that. Added more asphaltum, a little bit of blue. Try it again. Better. A little better. Still not quite where I want it, but a little better. A little bit more blue, too much blue. I'm going to bring some orange back into it. I think I'm probably where I want to be. This is where I want to be up in here. But for back in here, I want to be a little bit darker. That feels a little bit better. Basically, I just dealt with the two near complements, the cat orange hue and the ultramarine blue. And if I want to, I can deepen that. I can see it can go a little darker. And I actually don't mind being a little too light right at the outset. I'm going to throw some ochre into it, and we're going to kind of paint a little bit up in here. Okay. Come down, throw a little more ochre. Why? Because I don't want it quite that dark. All right, now that's a little bit of a big brush. Hate to use this little pointed brush, but I already got paint on it, so I'm going to use it. Simplify. Step back for a second. You guys couldn't see me, but I thought I'd at least let you know what I'm up to here. I'm going to throw a little bit more ochre into that color because I don't want it quite that dark. And I may eventually, but I'm going to go up around these eyes. I hate to paint around eyes too much, but in this case, for the sake of drawing, I'm going to. If I'm doing a very quick study, I generally paint right through them. A little warmer than the color that I see on her. Much more careful. You guys notice some of the landscape work that I've done in the past. I'm much more cut loose and go for it. And in this case, because I'm trying to do this a little bit more refined, that's the reasoning. Or that's the excuse, depending on how you want to look at it. I didn't want it that light. I want a little bit of light of this background color. It's probably a little lighter than I wanted, but right now we'll hold it, just kind of push it back into that paint. I kind of like that edge getting lost quite a bit here. And same shadow color. As long as I got the shadow color mixed up, use it. If it's similar, use it. Right here, similar. Right here, similar. Side of that finger, similar. Finger goes down. And if I'm a little off, I'll adjust it later. I'll make it darker, make it lighter, make it cooler, make it warmer, whatever is necessary. Using this number, nice number 8. Pretty dark right here. Pretty dark. So actually, I have a couple of variations of that color mixed up. One with a little more ochre in it, and one with a little bit more blue and brown in it.
Is the asphaltum
I'm sorry, say it again?
Is asphaltum?
Yes, asphalt. The asphalt, there's different companies has asphalt, and I've used them in the past. Some of them get quite green. The Gamblin I like because it's warm, and it just tends to work better for me. So I'm going to add some more white. Really some subtle stuff going on in there. I want to have time to get into that later. Not right now, but I do want to have time to get into it later. Kind of these are what you call halftones. And if you don't get the halftones in, no matter how beautiful of a painting you do, it's not going to work very well. The halftones hold, this anchors your painting. The halftones are what really gives you the believability in your modeling, and your lights are the accents, as is color. I think of color as an accent more than I do something that holds a thing together. Now, I like to paint with a brush that's a little bit too big. I think I've mentioned this to you guys before, and everybody has different tendencies. My tendency is to pick too soon, and so by using a bigger brush, I can't pick. I was going to say I don't pick. I can't pick because I really have to use that brush. And so for me, it works the best. So there's some halftones. Let's keep going with the shadow, which is and I've kind of destroyed most of that shadow color on my palette. So I just went back with, I think I'm about right here. Yeah, pretty close. Close enough. I'm going to want this way up here. I can see right now. I made a big drawing mistake, because this, I'm going to take terp, just plain old terp right now, and I'm going to wipe there. And I'm going to redraw.
Laurel wants to know if you've heard that halftones belong to the white.
If what?
Halftones belong to the white.
Well, halftones can belong to the darks. Depends upon the lighting of your painting. In this case, yes, most of the halftones are in the light. Most of them are. There are a few subtleties. Those are what I guess you would call reflective lights. But yeah, generally not in all paintings, but in this particular painting, the halftones are part of the light. Now I made that color quite a bit warmer than I need to. I'm going to bring I just threw some green back into that color and ochre. Probably went a little too green, but I believe I can still make it work. Let's put it that way. Now, it went so green, I threw some red back into it, the quinacridine or alizarin. This is that mapping in stage that I was talking about. I map in the shadow, so to speak. Oh, as long as I got it, I'm going to grab it when I've got a little bit of too much red in it and lay in the interior of that ear. All right. Shadow, shadow, shadow. Let's get this shadow in quite a bit darker because it's really hard. Now, the reason shadows will be lighter or darker has a little bit to do with the local color, but it has more to do with the ambient light. If the ambient light, meaning the overall lighting in this room, can get down in here, this would be lighter. It would probably be more like this. The shadow in her arm would be lighter. It would be more like this. These are facing upward. They are getting what we would refer to as ambient light. So there's a reason for this stuff. You know, when I was learning, nobody explained this to me. By the way, I elongated her. And cinched her waist in even a little bit. I think that comes from fashion classes I took when I was in art school. That you elongate necks, elongate waists.
Nice.
You can't do that with a camera. You guys ever study Sargent? Look at how long sometimes those figures are. They're not your 6 head or even a 7 head. Some of them are, I mean, I've looked at some of his and it looks like they're 14 heads. So, but it adds elegance, it adds grace. That's basically what we're doing when we do that kind of stuff. Okay, let's stay with the shadow of the flesh a little bit because I probably should have put it in down a little bit on the arm. And then it obliterates kind of the fingers. Shadow. Just so I don't have to worry about it later because I know I'm probably not going to get in and do beautiful hands just because of time. Hands, I've mentioned this so many times. I mention it to my classes all the time. I believe personally, there's nothing more difficult to paint than a hand. To really, really capture the feeling of the hand. And it just takes practice and practice to really get it down.
Do you think of simplifying your halftones?
Yeah, I would simplify everything in the beginning. I absolutely simplify halftones. Now, I took that shadow color and I put some red into it because I'm going to paint this part, the shadow of the dress. Went a little too red, so I threw a little blue. Want it darker than the arm, but I'm going to throw a reflective light back on that arm. But where the dress meets the neckline, I want that dress to be quite a bit darker because red, this is darker than this, therefore this should be darker than this shadow. Hopefully you follow me in that. Still using this number 8, by the way. Okay, let's get the shadow back on that chair. So I just threw about same color, just throw a little green into it. Try to unify this whole thing. So I hope that makes sense to you. Then I'll break it apart. So that's actually a very good way to think about the way you do this kind of thing. You unify it in the beginning, and then you make it more complex as you begin to look in and hunt for the refinements, the details. Down here, so I might as well do this one at the same time. Kind of just unify it. I got a really good consistency on that paint right now. It flows. The reason being, you see how I got that nice long stroke out of that? It's not too thin. So bring it out a little further and a little bit. Okay. A little bit on the, still dealing with shadows. We're about a little over 20 minutes into it. Too more brown into that, and it's too light. brown and green, brown being the asphaltum, green being the sap. And we're gonna add a little blue to that.
Is the light on the model warm or cool?
Well, it's relatively cool. It's not really warm. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start painting it with a little bit of warmth and end up adding cools. Just so you guys, you'll see what I mean. But I don't want to do that until I have it set up. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm setting it up. If you don't set things up properly, I've mentioned this over and over when I paint anything. It's the whole key is setting it up properly. If you don't set it up properly, I don't care what you do to it, it's not going to work. So I'm trying to unify it, set it up properly, pretty much. To me, it's making relative sense. Okay. I think I've got most of the shadows pretty well laid in. All right. That being the case, I am going to start on a basic light. And there's warmer. I'm going to start a little warmer. I'm not going to start that light. That would be a mistake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my probably white Naples. I'm going to mix it right into the background color that I already have mixed up because I don't have much of it here. I'm going to slightly warm it up with some ochre and maybe a little bit of the cat orange, a little bit of, if it's going too hot on me, which it is right now, I will cool it off with one of the cools, blue, the green, maybe even the brown. I think this is going to be too hot, but I'm going to try it anyway. Throw a little extra green into it. That's a little lighter than I want too. It's almost the color of the board. You know, I never know that. This, by the way, I had this piece toned 4 or 5 months ago, just sitting around. So I didn't tone it for this painting. I think I'm okay. I want it lighter. I don't like it. It looks darker on my palette. So I just right now threw some more asphaltum and a little bit of green back into it. I'm going to try it one more time. I like that better. Maybe I'm a little green. So I'm going to throw a hint of orange, and then we're going to start. We're going to start right here. Up here. And we're going to move it into the shadow where the light meets the shadow, one of the more difficult areas to paint. Everybody wants to overblend it. And that's, you start doing that, and your painting or your figure gets what I call rubbery. Still painting with this number 8, by the way. I step back to check it out. The color is okay. I'm not real crazy about the transition area. So I'm going to grab one of these rosemary mongoose, and I'm going to do this. All right, and then I'm going to take a number, what is this? It looks like a 4. Yeah, it is. A number 4. I'm going to take some of that background color, which I already have, and I'm going to bring it in and do a little reflective light right here. Nope, not light enough. Try it again. There we go. Worked pretty good. I want to mix that and then bring the ridge above the brow line and the cranium down. There we go. Leave it alone. So I've so far dirtied up about 4 or 5 brushes. Looking back for my number 8. Okay, there it is. Oh, I see a really neat shadow that I didn't have earlier. Really neat shadow. I'm going to rest my little fingernail down, and I'm going to, so for the sake of accuracy, down here, down that finger. Oh, I'm glad I did that. And there's a little bit of a shadow coming off of, oops, trying to find the right value. There we are. right there. Just slivers, little slivers. Okay. Keep going. Paint that color down. See, I noticed that as soon as I started painting this cheek area, I noticed that shadow, and I didn't catch it earlier. Some beautiful little halftones in here. I think what I'm going to do right now is grab, I want to hit a dark. So my little pointed brush again, clean my fingernail off. The eyebrow has got to sit back in that shadow. That's pretty good. And this eyebrow is going to come from here down. And that's pretty good because I brought it over too far. Okay, so let's keep that going. Well, I've got this. I'm going to add some orange and maybe a little red to the color I was just using. What I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to be careful. And her lips, as they go into shadow, are darker. So I'm really very carefully mixing up a darker value right here as her lips go back into shadow. All right. Let's keep going. Whoop, what the heck did I pick up? Oh, I see what I did. I picked up, there we go. Still wrong.
Laurel wants to know if you will be working cool or warm temperatures in the skin tones generally.
Wants to know exactly. Could you say that one more time?
Sorry, if you'll be working cool over warm.
Yes. Yes, I will.
And Ray was saying that properly setting up a painting is one of the most important things he learned from you as a student.
Yeah, properly setting up a painting is hard.
One that he tends to rush sometimes because he wants to see a finished
Yep.
piece immediately.
Who said that?
Ray, yeah.
Well, take it from pro. Ray knows. He's absolutely right. Everybody wants their painting to look finished right at the beginning. And as someone who was in that camp, as soon as I got over that, my painting started getting better. Painting should look good at the very end. I'm going to go my smaller brush, or I could grab the number 4. I've got these 2 brushes in one hand, and my number 4 disappeared. Oh, here it is. And so I can take my number 4, take the same color I was just painting with. God, it looks dark on my palette. A little too much terp in it. Right above the eye socket. Really soft. And then on the eyelid itself, it's cooler, but for right now, for the sake of, I'm going to get a value in there. So we got a little bit of a value in there. All right. Now I don't want to stay too long on just the face. I could. I got a friend of mine, wonderful painter down in Los Angeles, Dan Jose, who said to me and to my class, he said, I could get lost in a head for up to 8 hours. I know exactly what he means. It's really capturing subtleties and finding out, looking for nuances when you do that kind of stuff.
Can you describe what you mean by setting up your painting again?
What I mean by setting up your painting. All right. The easiest way for me to explain that is that listen to it this way. Highlights sit on, if you're painting an apple, highlights sit on top of the base colors in that apple, right? Details sit within that realm. If you don't have those areas in there to begin with, you don't have any place to place your highlights, to place your detail. You don't paint the detail. You don't paint a nostril and paint a nose around it. It's probably one way of stating it. Actually, that's pretty good.
So
I don't know why I haven't said that before.
You're simplifying basic shapes first, right?
And I've said this, for me, learning how to paint is learning how to observe in the proper order. So you don't start with all the incredible, wonderful refinements that you think there are. You start with the basics and you build the refinements in. And the longer you take to build those in, chances are the better your painting is going to be. These knuckles are a little bit darker. Now I feel like I have that too wide right there, that part of the nose. So what I'll do is take this. This is the subtlety of the drawing part of doing it. That feels a little better. Let's get that warm lower lip in there. So I'm going to use the orange quinacridone, mix it in with a lighter color, a little bit of life. I threw a little too much life into it, I think, but let's see. Little, as I said, I threw a little too much life into it. I don't want it that bright that fast. And by the way, I feel the same way about adding bright colors, not just details, but I feel the same way about adding colors to a painting that I do about painting detail first. I like the color to grow into the painting. That isn't to say I may not experiment from time to time and try something where I just start with incredibly intense color and see what I can pull out of it. But generally speaking, that's not how I paint. This is much more how I would do a portrait. All right. Now, what I want to do in the next 20, 25 minutes is have the rest of this all laid in. So we're going to start with the arm. Soft in here, soft. So I just barely touch that brush down. And it gets, boy, this is where you get into your color. I see a lot of green, right? Believe it or not, right here. And then it gets really dark fast. And I haven't punched that as much as I should. But so it gets like this. And what we're doing is you adding dimension. Now, the side of the arm where that black line was is very red. So I can actually take some of that quinacridone, add it to my paint. I don't like that. It's a little too raw. So I'm mellowing it out with a little bit of asphaltum. I'll get it. A little orange into it. Color searching. That's good enough. And stays pretty reddish down in here. A little shadowy right about in here. So I went grab some of that shadow color, brought it in. Okay, keep going. Got to keep plowing ahead. Otherwise, this is how the painting will look when it's done. And if I were doing something like a portrait, commission portrait, at the end of 90 minutes, it wouldn't even look this far along. Because I'd be fixing colors, adjusting constantly things that are bothering me that aren't quite the way I want them. So we're going to get this laid in, her chest. I'm stepping back every now and then. I can see some things I don't like, drawing wise. I'm always assessing my drawing, always. That feels better. Sometimes it's just a touch, man. Sometimes it's not a lot. It's just a touch that you need to really get it to work. Now, I just noticed this. It gets quite green right here. So I just picked up some more of the sap. Nope, too light. Try it again. There we go. And go back to the shadow. Bring that shadow back into it. Shadow's warmer, quite a bit warmer. There, all the way up. Definitely in here. And then she gets a beautiful warm reflection from her dress. Right. Too much. But I'm going to push it back into that color. So maybe I can make it work, huh? Right, careful. Messed it up. Got to hit that shadow again. Pretty easy color. It's very dark. Dark and slightly warm. Okay. A little bit of that dark warm, and we'll get it right. So we pronounce it a little bit more. Now, why the hell did I leave that elbow like that?
I was wondering the same.
What? You were wondering?
Mhm.
Well, pipe up.
Just waiting.
See if I saw it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I catch things a day later, you know, and that's when I call myself names like an idiot. What the hell were you thinking? That kind of stuff. So let's get this other arm in. Slightly darker, slightly warmer. I've got to move. I feel like I've got to get moving a little bit quicker. Picking a little too soon. It's okay. I'm coaching myself there. It's okay. You guys ever catch yourself doing that? Hey, you're doing okay. Or, oh, God, why'd you do that? Those are the two lines. Generally, I use the second one more than I do the first one. A little warmer. Whoa, too warm. But sometimes I don't try and worry about getting the right color because I know I'm going to work that color into the color that I already have down on the page. Now there's going to be more of a light happening. I'll show you, right? Let's pop that in there. It's kind of neutral, a little on the cool side, but it's going to sit right about there, there, and there. We'll just leave it alone. I have to yell at myself like that. Back on the arm, I want to get the shadow in from the strap. Little touches like that make a huge difference, man. They really do. A little bit of a shadow there. Let's get it. Let's finish off down in here because I want to leave myself enough time to go back and add some lights. There's a lot of glistening lights down in here. Back side of that hand, I think I just kicked the camera.
Yeah.
Told you I wasn't going to have time to do those fingers as beautifully as I'd like. So probably end up coming back later. Now they're being lit. And I don't like the way they're being lit. Let me explain why. It looks like someone dipped the tips of her fingers in powdered sugar. Way too illuminated. So I'm going to treat it more like the rest. We'll illuminate them, but we'll keep it more like this. So I'm not going to illuminate them with that super intense bright light.
More subtle.
Huh?
More subtle.
Okay. Get that shadow, let it kind of rake across a little bit more. Okay. Most of her flesh is done except her legs. And let's get those. Those are going to be a little darker. Number one, I don't know if she's wearing stockings, but they're further away from the light. So let's start them about here. And let's get the shadow on the front leg. Pretty dark, right about in here. And a nice cast shadow from one leg to the other. And it's very dark. And it's right there. A little bit of dark right in there. And not quite as dark, so I mix it down and we'll hit a little bit of a darker shadow in this right around the kneecap. I don't want to overstate the legs because they're really far away from the light, right? So we get that, then we go for the base flesh tone. If I can come close to it, because I completely obliterated it. I think it's somewhere in here. Nope, a little lighter. That's too light. So I'm constantly just working back with 2 or 3 different variations of color. I think I'm pretty close right here. Not bad. Close enough. We're going to start right here. A little cooler than I want, so if I want to throw a little bit more orange and ochre into it, we'll warm it up. There we go. At the top of her knee. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone for right now. Let's get her dress in. So we have it all laid in, and then hopefully then I can go back and really start to zing it. The dress, this is only going to take a minute, but the dress is going to take a little longer. It's mainly that red, but before I put that red in, I want to put a few of the folds in, and I'm going to put them in too thick. And that's a little too dark. Sometimes I don't mind getting them a little too dark because I just paint over them. Still on the red side, but a shadow red. So I throw a little orange into that red. Any other little fold back here?
Laurel has another good question. Do you have any thoughts on how you create luminosity in skin tones?
Layers. Yeah, you build. That's the way. I'm not going to get a lot of it because I just don't have the time. That happens over a period of time. You cannot get a lot of luminosity. And a lot of it is just layering, just getting that right layer on top. I always like to work midtones to lights to darks. So you think of midtones or halftones, whatever you want to refer to them as. And I build constantly to the lights. You've got to get enough information in the shadows is the other part. A lot of times people concentrate only on the lights and they don't worry about the shadows. That's another fault. So we're going to take that. Now we're going to take the red of the dress. So I'm going to take a lot of my cad orange, the quinacridine, cad orange, It's got a lot of orange in it. It's not, it's like a cad red light. And I think that's pretty close right there. Okay, so we're gonna pop that in here right now. And I'm ripping through this paint like crazy. And if it's not going, it's there. There we got to get a little more terp and medium into it because it's just not there. It goes. I want it to lay down easily. So it's got to be fluid. It's got to be fluid, but it's got to be opaque at the same time. And it's not an easy, I think I mentioned that when I was a student, that was the thing that took me the longest to understand getting the right paint consistency. I'm better at it, but it's still one of those things that I've learned if it's too stiff, if it's too runny, I don't like it. I know there are people that work with drips and they love drips. I'm not necessarily one of them. I don't really have anything against them. It's not my thing. So, but see, that's nice fluid stroke. And I'm a big fan of Zorn, Soroya, people like that. And when I look at their work, I just see, and I think I've mentioned this before, it looks like it just dropped off the brush. It didn't look like they had to work at it at all. As you know, I know artists go back and chew their painting up like crazy, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And come up with beautiful results. It all truly depends upon what you're trying to achieve, you personally. And if I don't put enough folds in, I can always go back and put folds in forever. I'm just indicating. So if you hear me being quiet, it's because I'm trying to catch up.
How do you balance the right amount of information in the lights and shadows?
How do you balance it?
Another great oral question.
You know, a lot of these answers sound like I'm just repeating myself, but it's a matter of simplification and not progressing until you get that balance. And that balance will be determined by simplifying both the lights and the shadows. And within the shadows, don't be afraid to find darks and lights. And within the lights, don't be afraid to find some subtle lighter lights. But those happen as your painting progresses. They don't happen, you don't want to do that immediately because that's how your painting gets out of control. Your painting gets out of control when you try and do too much right from the beginning, instead of keeping it nice and simple, understated. And that's probably the best word I've used, understated. Understate. And then if you want to go further, but keep it understated as long as you can. When it looks good understated, it means it's ready for you to go further with it. If it doesn't look good understated, you know what? Going further isn't going to help it. It's probably going to hurt it.
So would you go back and simplify them?
Yep. Go back. There's a line that many artists use, and that is that painting is not only a forward process, meaning you don't only paint one direction. It means if you've gone too far and it isn't working, go back and simplify it to where it was working. In other words, let me put it this way. This is a real kind of a ignoramus way of saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you start your painting, you have a blank canvas. All right. At that point, you haven't done anything wrong. Right? But as soon as you start getting some marks down, you have some that are right, probably some that are wrong. Now, that goes back to this evaluation process. You have to go back from time to time and evaluate. You have to plow ahead like you're doing it correctly. And then every so often, step back and go, whoops, didn't quite get that as good as I thought. I'll fix it. Don't keep going ahead if it isn't working. That's a hard thing to do because most people want to add the eyes. They want to add, because the eyes finish off a head. But once those eyes are in there, if ever, you're almost done. Okay, I gotta just paint through some things and go back and hopefully put some other things in because I'm taking too long. I can feel it. I want to have, see, I should be done with the dress and the chair right now. So I'm just going to start plopping stuff in. If it's wrong, hopefully I'll go back and fix it. Okay, let's get the chair in very quickly. Don't want to take more than a couple minutes to get that in. So I'm going to start with white, green, brown, and ochre. A little bit of orange. Nope, too green. More ochre, a little more white, a little orange to tone that green down. Let's try it one more time. That's good enough. And same thing down below. Don't like that. Add a little blue to it, maybe. Huh? A little bit more blue. And down here. A little darker right as it comes up to her dress. So I add a little bit of blue, a little bit of red. Leave it alone. And I'm going to take a little Naples, throw a little Naples into it just because I don't want to have to do it later. And we'll put a little bit of a light on it. Leave it alone. I missed part of her leg. Okay. Let's go back into her face. Start to add some information. Okay. Number one, fix the mouth a little bit. Like that color I'm using. And I'm going to start to amplify the value change. I pushed the color a little more than I had hoped, but still okay. I am going to add some lights and what brush do I want to use for this? I want to be delicate. Try and use a, we're going to take a little bit of care in color mixing. I want a cooler, lighter color, but I don't want it too cold. That's pretty cold, but I'm going to try it. Don't mind it. Let's see what happens. Step back. Okay. Corner of her is right here. Step back. Okay. And that's about how often I step back. When you hear me say step back, that's what I'm doing. And when I'm stepping back, I'm assessing. How's it coming out? It's coming out okay. So I haven't gone as light as I want to go. But with this brush, now if I have a smaller, which I think I do, right here, but I'll stay with this. Stay with the brush. It's a little too big. So hopefully you guys are seeing this. It's pretty subtle. And I would even be more subtle if I wasn't trying to meet a deadline right now. Meaning the changes that you would see that I'm making would be almost indistinguishable. Little more warm into that, not much. I just want to go. And below that, I think I'm gonna use another brush like that. And I'm gonna warm up, even though it doesn't look warm right there. Really subtle. Hollow in the cheek. It's under the cheekbone, a little hollow there. Probably a little too much. So what I do is take my other brush, soften it. So now we're gonna start to come in. I'm gonna go in a little on the chin. Chin gets illuminated pretty good, right about here. And very small brush. I don't use them this soon, but I'm going to because of time. Filter. Very delicate. Light on the septum. Very delicate. Step back, start to shape up. Start to feel okay. Go back to my, where is it? Okay, that isn't the brush I was looking for, but it'll work. I'm just looking right now, very careful. I'm gonna bring a little bit more brown into that tone so that I can get a little bit of separate, not enough, a little bit more brown into that same flesh tone I'm using. I got it a little too light. And with that small brush, the same brown, come in, we're going to hit that. Okay. Go back. I'm going to soften a little bit up this direction. And I'm going to go back. Okay, let's start to get those eyes in. Let's see if I can get a little bit on that hand. There's the wrist. Now the question about luminosity is you do what I'm doing, you do it slower. You bring things up very slow, and if it's wet into wet, you just constantly fixing. Because I haven't hit the brights yet. So keep that in mind. I have not hit the brights. Where people will look at it and you think maybe, yeah, you did, but I haven't. All right. So, well, I've got that same kind of color. Let's look around the rest of her body. Down on this side of the cleavage. And then a little light up here. Definitely here. Take a look at that elbow now, man. We want to. I'm stepping back constantly. And re-guessing certain things. Now I'm going to start to push a little darker. I'm going to take this quinacridine, the umber, and the blue. But it's quite red. Make sure my finger is clean. And I'm going to add a little more blue to it now. So I don't want it quite that red. Or I could add green to it for that matter. And just a little darker back in here. Here, down below the eye. Very, very dark. Eyelid. Hit a little light on that arm. What are we doing here? 25 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be close. I was hoping by drawing it up ahead of time, I could refine it pretty far. And I'm not gonna get as far as I want, but
Earl has another great question. As you're laying down your strokes, are you thinking about creating volume and structure?
yes, now I am. In the beginning, no. In the beginning, I'm doing setup. Like I said, I'm setting it up. Now I am. Now when, yes, I put a stroke down, I am thinking about pronouncing the structure, getting the structure to begin. But I don't want to have a finish on it immediately. I want it to build slowly. This is kind of sheer and it's making this weird shadow, and I'm trying to eliminate that. I don't like that. I'll tell you why. When I was first looking at this, I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on there.
Oh, I see it now.
And that's what it is. But I don't want to call too much attention to those like to the knees, excuse me. I do want to get a little bit of reflected light, if I can, back here, here, and then little in the clavicle, a little darker in the clavicle right here. She's got a she's got a shadow, cast shadow from the ear ring down there. And speaking of the ear, kind of avoided that, haven't I? Pretty light. So let's take that color. Let's add a little orange to it because it is an ear, and see what we can do. Let's get the finger. The light on that finger. And the back of the hand. And one knuckle. This is the kind of stuff I could spend a long time on that hand to get it to read just. Now, I'm trying to make it read just right in a real understated, simplified fashion. Up something, so I'm gonna go back and fix it. I put my fingernail down right there. Okay, let's get the other eye in. Okay. Not quite as dark, but that eyebrow ends up getting up in there, and we darken it a little bit in here. That whole eye got a beautiful little eyelash that sticks out. Now, you notice I kept the light of the eye there. I don't want that because you don't see it. It's just, and that isn't even good. I want to bring the, there we go, it brings it down. Let's get, I put a nice beautiful sheen on her upper lip too, by the way, or lower lip, excuse me. And that's gonna go like here. And I have yet to get on a little detail in her hair. She has a ring. So we're gonna put that right, get rid of my, keep putting my little finger down. There's a ring down here, but I'm not gonna worry about that. I just don't have, further we get away from the face, the less detail I'm adding. I would put more in, but time permitting, I find that if I do it, I have to sacrifice something else. So really important to me that I get, and just got a little bit of light. I'm just peering in there, a little bit of light sneaking right about here. Pretty good. And a little bit right, but that light is like really minimal. So, all right, we're gonna see if I can amplify her face just a little bit more, and I'll go back and do some work on her dress. For that, I'll use this little brush. I wish I had one just a little bigger. I know I do, I just don't have it with me. But we're gonna take that same color I was using, kind of slightly green, and we're gonna amplify. Whoops, that's brighter than I wanted. So I'm gonna clean my brush, carve it down. And it comes down on the bone right there. And then So you can see, I hope, we're starting to get a little volume. We're taking what was there and we're building it and making it more, giving more structure, giving more volume. Where in the beginning, I gave it a little, and now I'm pushing it a little bit. And sometimes what I have found, I push it too far and I have to go backwards. But I find I have more success if I bring it up slowly than if I try and bring it up all in one shot. So super subtle halftones, you guys, subtle. And this is where as I'm spending a lot of time, I may go in and do some subtle color variations. And I'm going to take that little brush, and I'm going to, not quite that bright, but not quite as bright as the nose. There. And as it moves over into shadow, let's get a little bit more definition in that ear. It's a little clumsy. I hate, I've seen these beautiful paintings sometimes, and these guys do these just god-awful ears. And if the ear is going to show, do it right. If the ear doesn't show, don't sweat it, man. Let's get some lights on it too. The lights are right. I'm going to do this. There. And back here. And then we'll hit a little bit of and more brown in it. Let's hit the okay, where are we at here? I got 15 minutes, an entire 15 minutes. What am I going to do? Got all this damn time.
She has something in her hair, or is that just
Yeah, I'm going to do a little work on her hair. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, it's a this is a band. It's a dark band that comes up. Took me a while to figure it out, but remember I said I'm more concerned about edges than I am interior. So I'm going to go back, fix some of those edges with this nice, beautiful. These rosemary brushes like this are just exceptional for doing this kind of stuff with. I mean, I'm not necessarily trying to advertise for them, but honest to God, I mean, when I can find a brush that does some magic, and I can turn you guys onto it, all the better.
what temperature are the highlights?
What temperature? They're slightly cooler. Not a lot. My favorite part of painting right there.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd mention that. Not that it really matters, but let's bring that sheen a little further down the arm. A little bit on the shoulder. I got to stand back. I need a little bit of amplification on that dress. I know for a fact I do. All right. And so I'm going to deal with this big old flat. And I'm going to take cad orange, almost exclusive, just a touch. And so I'm going to add some lights. I'm going to have to use a lot of medium because I'm painting over that very, very wet paint. Oh, that's pretty good right there. That's what I was waiting for. The question earlier came up about luminosity and skin. It's really about what I'm doing here. It's bringing things up so slowly that you almost don't see them. And then you keep pushing until it works. So what you see is I'm just pushing that just a little bit further than it was. And then I can do the same thing going the other direction, but the other direction meaning the darks. So within the shadows, there is detail. Voila. Here. A little bit of reflected light. Add a little bit of cool to that. What happens, I'm starting to give it dimension. Let's get a little into her hair. Got about 10 minutes here. So don't want to keep them, I want to keep it kind of neutral cool.
Are the rosemaries you're using sables?
Say it again.
Are the rosemary brushes you're using sables?
These are, they're mongoose, synthetic mongoose. Stepping back, feels okay. I'm being forgiving to myself when I say it's okay. There's things that I'm not crazy about, but the reason I'm being forgiving is time. I can take it a little louder now. See, you sneak up on it. You don't go as bright as you think you need to. Now I can go a little brighter. And you go too far with it, and you come back with, oh, where's my big brush here? Nope, I don't want to dirty another brush, but I'm gonna, okay. We'll just take this one. Asphaltum ultramarine. Asphaltum, a little bit more, pretty thick. And while I've got that, the brush I was using to hit highlights with in the hair. I can go back and add a little medium, a little Turk. Same.
Barbara wants to know if you ever purchase images for painting.
I don't. I probably should on what I've done with my jazz musicians, but I'm changing them quite a bit. So, but no, I don't. I always feel, particularly for paintings, I feel like it's the artist was the photographer. And so, if I want to do something like that, I try and go out and create an image that's similar. If you love, I used to give this as an assignment, by the way, in class, where students were required to pick an artist, and it was in a portrait class, where people would pick a portrait artist, and if they loved the lighting, the pose, and they would set up someone in class and try and duplicate the lighting and the pose, the hands, if they were there. It's a wonderful exercise. So, someone's already done a wonderful job of that. Use the knowledge and go create your own. Now, if you're doing, say, a portrait of, I don't know, Winston Churchill or Kennedy or somebody like that, you're not going to be able to go out and photograph them. Or even if you wanted to do a painting of someone that's, today, you probably can't go out and photograph. So that's a different story. That's a completely different situation. But generally, I've always felt, and in 1978, a copyright law came into effect when I was illustrating. It said you cannot use a photographer. They have the copyright if it's been printed, if it's been, if you had a buddy, like I would love to paint a couple of my things that my son has shot. Ian has shot some gorgeous stuff. And you know what? I might do that, but that's different. I will get permission from him. Hopefully. I'm not telling you not to, by the way. Feel free. I mean, if it works for you, great. I don't mind having a little sparkle up there since it's right near her face. A few little things that I don't like. We got about 5 minutes here, so this is the hardest part of the face to paint, I've always felt. I'm just looking to see if I say reflected light. I don't actually. I can go a little darker. I can see right now. Right. I see a lot of subtleties I could be adding in there. And if I were painting on this longer, man, I'd go back in here for probably another 3 or 4 hours and just deal with subtleties. But this is pretty good lay-in. All right. It does basically what a first stage of a painting to me should do. And I was talking to a group of students recently, and one of the things I said is at the end of that first session, very often your painting may look like it's almost complete, but look closer. Look, what else can you bring to it? What else can you add to it to even make it better? And if you hold off on your details, hold off on those things, you will force yourself to look in and find more. And in doing so, probably come up with a better painting. Hold off on finishing. as long as you can. And I guarantee you, you'll probably come up with a better painting. These are quick. These are like quick studies. I don't consider. I mean, if I were really doing super finish, and I'd love to do something more. Simone's such a wonderful model. I'm so sorry that she moved to LA. She was very inspirational. Not only was she pretty, but she knew how to pose. She knew how to take a really wonderful pose. She's just, I think she's moving into acting, but she was just, to me, she's an artist's model. And it's hard to find people that are like that can actually take a pose. I happen to be really lucky because I have a daughter that's like that too. Unfortunately, she's in Paris, so I don't have her here to use as a model. Isn't that terrible to say? I don't have her here to use, but she has that knack too. Some people do. Some people just have that incredible knack, and they can just take a pose, and the pose. And usually, it's people that have had dance or acting or something along that line. And it's just a sheer pleasure when you get somebody like that, because it just makes it so nice to be able to paint them. Put a little light on the fingers, down to the knuckle, a little bit beyond, and then it picks up down towards the tip of the finger. The hand's working okay. I do like that arm. not to brag, but I did a really good arm. I know the face is supposed to be the star, but I'm always happy when I get something like this that actually really holds together and feels voluminous. It doesn't feel like I just kind of threw it in there. It feels like it belongs.
You add the light influence on the chair.
Excuse me?
You add the light on the chair.
Here?
No, on the hand.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. This is how we're going to finish this up, you guys. To do a little bit of this glistening.
The wind is really picking up.
Huh?
The wind.
Yeah, we have wind here today, man. Or I don't know where all of you guys are at, but we've had strange weather here lately. Rained a little bit yesterday, just a little, unfortunately, not enough to make a huge difference. And today we've got wind, and then it's going to get nice over the weekend. See, I always try and not pop it out as much as it appears. If you do very often, it just stands out too much. And since you're already working on something dark,
So Bill wants to know, do you cram things in the last minute, or just
do I what?
Do you plan the things you cram in the last, or just wing it?
I kind of plan it. I kind of do. I kind of understand where I'm headed. And it's, again, it goes back to that line that I used right in the beginning about you have to learn how to see things in the proper order. And I came up, when I wrote this quick studies book a few years ago, I came up with that phrase, and it really made sense. It's like, if you look at details too soon, you paint details, and then you got all this other stuff to try and make the whole painting to come together. Where if you keep your painting together as a total, and then add your details to the last minute, then the painting holds together. Last thing, a little bit of a shadow right here. From here, we'll bring it down. It's working okay. So, bothers me a little bit up in here. I could probably fuss on that. Maybe I will. Maybe bring some more warms. A lot of times in the halftones, right before it goes into shadow, it'll warm up. But we're about done with our, actually, we're about 5 minutes over. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this. I just kind of wanted to do, I've been doing, it's a little more portraity. And so I kind of wanted to do that for a change, but rather than just the head, I think it's always better if I can get a little bit more into it for the sake of demonstration purposes. That's just cat orange thrown back into that color and just brushed into it while it's wet. Okay, Lady in Red. Thank you, Scott. And thank you all. I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but I'll find something. Try and every week I'm trying to do something a little different. Just partly because I know that all of you as painters, everybody has different interests. Some of you are more figurative, some of you are more plein air, some of you are more, you love seascapes. And so
I think you're done.
I happen to like everything. So for me,
I think
I just switch around. Okay. Thank you all.